As you might expect, I'm taking an opposition on this. I do believe that individual integrity is what defines us as a culture and defines us as a society. While I understand that there's an importance about having cohesive values and there's an importance about group dynamic, we have to ask ourselves whether we're to be subsumed to this at any point that we happen to go against it. Cultural integrity is a nice standpoint for people to take. It's oftentimes the last remaining vestige of reasonable argument for those arguments that have lost out on science, reason, virtue of their own merits. They constantly go back to, well, this is the way it's been. This is the way that things have been for thousands of years, and this is our culture, this is our value, and this is how we orchestrate ourselves as a people. But we have to ask ourselves a few questions there. For one, what is culture? And it isn't the immutable thing that we constantly make it out to be. If we were to take the culture of America of the 1950s, what looked radical then, now, to us, looks what is normal. We can take clothing, we can take political discourse, we can take the way that people voted, the way that people composed themselves, the way that we spoke. Those things that were once radical always become the norm. And those things that were once the culture become the thing of the past. So, we have to ask ourselves, are we going to really say as individuals that we will subsume ourselves to culture, that we'll take the argument from others, that we're going to become just a part of a collective? I challenge anyone here to tell me that they want to be told by any group, by any organization that claims them as a member, that they are to go ahead and take a portion of themselves and make it inauthentic for the sake of the comfort of the others. Let's say that we had two people in this room that had blue eyes, and we were arbitrarily to decide as a culture that blue eyes were a negative thing. Now, do you think that that's fair to those two people in the room? Let's go in a Rawlsian sense here and say, like a veil of ignorance, we're going to go ahead and take a moment and step back and cast over ourselves this idea that we do not know our place in society, that we're going to orchestrate a society based on no knowledge beforehand, and we're going to ask ourselves what is fair and what is right. Now, with transgendered individuals, they have unfortunately been on the other side of this veil. Society has already cast aspersions against them. Society has already deemed them deviant, deemed them outside of the norm. And as such, they have double the unemployment rate. They have 33.2% of transgender individuals attempt suicide in life, 75% are sexually assaulted, 88% are verbally assaulted at the very least. They're already on the other side of this veil of ignorance, but if we were to find ourselves in their spot, would that be where we would want to be, coming out on the other side of things? If we take a moment to step back from our culture and our current perceptions, the things that we've locked ourselves into and the things that we've made the norms of our lives, we might ask ourselves, if we were in their position, would we want these things done unto us? And if we did not want those things, would we be able to argue that as a culture we should be able to reinforce these things simply on the merit of a word? Could we honestly say today that what is radical to us is not going to be the norm in 20 years? Could we say that those individuals that we now cast aside from society, those individuals who suffer 3 times the average homeless rate, are going to be anything but normal? Anything but the people that you see from day to day? We have to ask ourselves, when we talk about issues of culture, and when we speak about the issue of the collective unit, whether we're talking about erasing ourselves, or whether we're talking about moving forward for a collective good. Now, there are those things that I will concede that culture takes best in. Certainly there are things of transit, there are things of public organization, there are certain modes that we have to go into culture for reliance upon, and these are normal and natural because they do not violate the right of the individual. But when it comes down to the choice of expression, when it comes down to who we are as individuals and how we have the right to compose ourselves, we have to ask, does culture have a place to tread there? Does it have the right to overreach into who we are as individual units inside of this culture? And do we say that B can override A simply because it's later on in the equation? I don't think that that really checks out with any of us, and I don't think any of us would want to be on the other side of the equation. Many people in this room at one point or another have been labeled as the other by society. Whether you know it or not, most of your groups, all the groups that we feel like we're normal Americans in, have at one time or another been on the other side of this. And once we get onto the side that we feel that the society has privileged us, that culture has said, okay, you're acceptable now, we're very quick to turn our backs on those people who are not yet accepted. We're very quick to say, well, there are much smaller percentages of the population. There are much weaker percentages of the population. We don't need to really support them because now I'm normal. Why should I care if they're normal yet? Well, that's common. But do we really want to be a common people? Do we want to be a common people that doesn't try to supersede what's been done before? And do we want to be a people that loses its sight of the future and the sight of what makes us individually dignified? Thank you.